what connections you guys have found between human supremacy and ecological overshoot? I was looking at my notes trying to realize why I wanted to talk about it so much. And is there anything that we're seeing that's really clear on that, or just basically everything that we're doing right now proves that theory?
Yeah, and I'll actually go back to one of the conversations you were referring to earlier about the 40 billion, just being able to support unlimited number of people, which of course is based on a human supremacist worldview, but also this fallacy that we as human beings, just all we need to do is fit together, shoulder to shoulder, squeeze together, because our entire existence only depends on the air that we breathe, and then that nothing else. Right. But also what it's lacking, in addition to all the things Alan referred to, is that our sustenance depends on food, and we consume a lot of food. And 8 billion of us collectively consume a lot of food. So currently, the space that we're taking is not the space that we occupy as human beings. The footprint calculations are actually coming from the space that we occupy to grow our food. So 50% of the land, the habitable land, is actually being used for agriculture. And to come to your human supremacy point, 77% of that agricultural land is being used for animal agriculture. And so we're using up incredible amounts of energy and space in order to grow crops that we then feed to the animals, who we then kill for food. So it's an incredibly inefficient process, but also a process that requires a ton of land, a ton of fresh water, a ton of energy, fossil fuel energy, to grow our food. And all of that land is being stolen from native species that are being displaced, from that land. So part of the, speciesist worldview is also which species do we give regard to and which species do we disregard and deem worthy of killing and contempt. All of the species that are food for slaughter are then being protected, and then any species that are considered to be predators are killed off. So we're seeing a lot of habitat destruction, habitat loss, species extinction that's primarily happening because of agriculture. So agriculture is actually known to be responsible for, I think it's 86% of the species that are at risk of extinction. It's because of agriculture. And so even going back 10,000 years ago when the agriculture, when we really started engaging in agriculture, if you look at the percentages in terms of biomass distribution of what we represented as one of the millions of species, we were about 1% of all of the mammalian biomass, and 99% of it was wild. And now we represent 36% of the mass, just the humans. 60% of the biomass is the animals that we slaughter. So these are the livestock. And then just 4% is what's left of wildlife. And so, it's just that figure always, it's just shocking what we've done. And that is a perfect figure, perfect graphic to represents a human supremacist worldview, where we and the animals that we kill for food, that's for our food, 96%. And everyone else, in terms of the mammalian biomass, is 4%. So, and that energy need, that food need, is continuing to grow at a much faster rate because the middle class is one of the fastest rising populations in the world in terms of growing populations. And it's most of that growth is coming from developing countries who are becoming industrialized, who are aspiring to live like the terrible lifestyles that we've modeled for the rest of the world. The high energy, high consumptive lifestyles, high extraction lifestyles. So we've set a terrible example, and now most of the rest of the world wants to follow that path to also live. Rightfully, you know, if you think of it from a social justice perspective, why would other people not want to live the way we have been living for, you know, centuries or decades?
Right.
So you can't argue that. But then again, like all the stats that Alan laid out, there's limits to our growth. We cannot continue to grow. And even if you were to separate, which we cannot, but even if you said, okay, you know what, I don't care about nature, I don't care about animals, I don't have any of the 4 R's that the indigenous perspectives bring to our knowledge, this idea that we can somehow survive without all of the biodiversity, without nature, and that we can just turn this planet into a machine, more of a machine that we've already done, is completely false and so arrogant, because it actually misses the point that you don't have to love or care for the nature that sustains you. It literally is the biophysical root of our existence. If nature goes, we go. So the point before we even reach the 40 billion or even the 20 billion that we could get to in the next 100 years, if the fertility rate, kind of the high projection for the UN, we're going to be seeing a lot more collapse happening before we even get to that point, because we will have taken out even more of nature than we currently have. So we simply cannot exist without nature. And I think we're kind of at a point where we're going to start seeing exceeding levels of collapse happening at much faster rates than we have been.